Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, and welcome to our session today on capability building that works. My name is Dr. Sandra Laughlin, and I am the head of EPAM's Client Learning and Talent Enablement practice. As a learning scientist and an organizational psychologist, I'm really excited about today's topic because I know it is an incredibly important one for you as an IT leader and for the almost every industry in your sector. In the past, when you had a gap in skills or capabilities, it was relatively straightforward to fill that gap by hiring outside or bringing in contract support. But that's really been changing. The talent shortage and the competition for scarce skills has really changed the face of what is required to get the right capabilities that you need in-house to help you achieve your digital transformation and realize your business objectives. Looking around your home office and looking at your organization's balance sheets, you realize that the digital revolution is changing everything about organizations in every sector. Everything from learning to develop new technology capabilities to becoming more agile to focusing on products over projects. There's quite a lot that you need to develop in-house for your organization to succeed and thrive in the current state environment. Looking here on this slide, you see that there are many different spaces in which your organization needs to develop, and everything from new technologies to leveraging data, moving from projects to products, thinking about your organization, how it's structured, how teams are created and formed and work, how leaders support their organizations, and all the time thinking about how to create agility, not just within your delivery of products and services, but in how your business is able to respond to changes in the environment. There are just a tremendous number of new things that you need to develop in-house in order to compete and thrive in your space. As an IT leader, you also know that talking about capability development is a lot easier than achieving it. Every day, if you read trade publications, you'll see statistics and research coming out on the significant gap between investments in upskilling and the results. Let's look at just a few of these statistics. So take a second and think about this. What percent of organizations believe they have the right skills, leader, or operating structure to adapt? If you said 30%, you were right. It's kind of remarkable how low this number is when you think about the incredible importance of the capability to building within an organization. Having only 30% of leaders with that level of confidence suggests a real need for change. Look at the next one. What percent of leaders do you think said that building capabilities is a top 10 priority for their organization? Well, according to McKinsey, it's 90%. So what do we know so far? Leaders are not confident that they have the right infrastructure to develop. It's a top 10 priority for almost every organization. How successful are they? What percent do you think said that their programs are effective at improving performance? Pretty low, right? The answer, it's about 25%. 1/4 of the investments in business critical upskilling are successful. That's a really scary statistic and something that when I'm talking with IT leaders is mentioned repeatedly. This is a really important need for us, but we don't know what to do to achieve it. So why is there a huge gap between the investments in growing capabilities and outcomes? Well, one of the most significant challenges and reasons for the lack of success is mistaking capabilities for skills. Let's talk first about skills. Skills are pretty straightforward things. They're tactical, they are common steps or activities. They're applied in predictable environments that really don't change that much. They are easily mapped to if-then statements if this situation, then I apply this clearly defined set of skills, and they're easily practiced, which means that if I do it over and over again, I will master that skill. Capabilities are a different animal. They are complex, they're messy, they are applied in environments that are fast-paced and dynamic and unpredictable. When you have a capability, you're not easily able to map it to an if-then situation. The situation may require a combination of capabilities, and discerning which capabilities to leverage requires you to deeply understand that situation and what it really is requiring. As a result, capabilities are very difficult to practice. They are something that has to be developed over time, often in trial and error situations, and generally speaking, in high-stakes environments. So what does this look like in practice? Let's take Agile as an example. Every week I talk to organizations and I often hear, we're Agile, we have an Agile culture, we're an Agile company. But when I dig in to understand what that really means, what I hear is we are doing Agile. We are doing the ceremonies, we're leveraging the tools, we have Kanban boards, we have backlogs, we have sprints. But that's all. Nothing really fundamental has changed about the organization, the way it works, the way its teams function, the way it budgets and plans programs. Being Agile is very, very different from doing Agile. It's not about applying certain techniques. It's about changing your culture and everything about your organization to be truly responsive to your customers, to work in increments so that you can quickly adapt and adjust. And it requires the organizational context to change to accommodate it. So the big question is, how do you develop these really critical capabilities? How do you as a leader support your organization to create new technology capabilities, to learn to leverage data and make data-driven decisions? How do you shift an organization from being project-focused to product-focused? How do you instill a new mindset of growth and agility in your organization? The answer is not simple. The reason that so many training programs have failed is because they have approached capability development from a typical training platform, using access to content or micro-learning or self-directed learning as the solution. Unfortunately, capability building is a lot harder than it seems. And a Capability Academy is a new and emerging trend within the learning space that is specifically designed to help you achieve these complex new skills within your organization. There are a number of components to a successful Capability Academy, and I want to highlight those for you here. The first and maybe the most important component of a successful Capability Academy is a deep linkage to business and strategy. The idea is that these capabilities are a critical differentiator for your business and a mechanism by which your company stays competitive and thrives in a complex environment. And as a result, these capabilities are not a nice to have, they are business critical. So these academies are highlighted and hallmarked by a sponsorship from executives, the CEO, your C-suite, and are really tightly aligned to your business strategy. If your organization needs to become cloud first, for example, to achieve flexibility and scale, Capability Academy around cloud is a natural extension of that strategy. Another component of effective Capability Academies is a focus on outcomes. Instead of focusing on seat time, how many hours are available, how many people have clicked through the content, there is a reorientation toward what have we as a company achieved as a result of this investment. What new skills or capabilities are we seeing from our employees? What is the total investment that we have created in this program? And what is the return that we are seeing? This is a very significant shift in how we typically think about training and development to an outcomes-based approach rather than one focused on inputs. Focusing on authentic work is a really important part of how we measure ROI. Instead of the outcomes being tests or quizzes or something that's not really tied to the day-to-day activities, Capability Academies are oriented around behaviors and changes that are aligned to the organization and ideally to the job function itself. Materials for academies are also very different. Instead of relying on generic off-the-shelf programs, academies leverage content that is tailored to the organization, the industry, and the job role. What an executive needs to understand about being cloud first is very different than what a marketing leader needs to understand or a developer. But everyone in the company needs to understand what it means to become cloud first, because just that reorientation of business affects everyone. The way that content is delivered also changes. Instead of having a focus exclusively on either instructor-led trainings or a list of online resources, there is an orientation toward a blended approach. And that means combining accessible online content that's scalable with real live conversations with experts, not trainers. Because these capabilities are so important and so difficult to develop, it's essential to rely on people who are expert in this space, who practice this every day to help your other employees grow their own capabilities. In academies, there's also a focus on social learning. Human beings are social creatures, and we learn best when we're learning from and with other people. The idea of creating a social community around learning in an organization is not really new, but the way that it's applied here is a bit different. Instead of just having a group of people to talk to or to discuss ideas with in general, the focus here is on having groups that are built with like-minded individuals, ideally within the same job function and certainly within the same vertical within an organization. And the focus here is on application. How are we going to apply these capabilities to change what we do? How will we look to see create a growth in our capabilities? How are we going to change the culture of the organization to ensure that these capabilities and new technologies and data and ways of working are adopted and grow within the company? Time is also a very important factor when designing capability academies. Unlike skills, capabilities take substantial time to develop. Imagine for a moment what is required for leaders in your organization to truly enable cloud within the company. They need to understand the fundamentals of cloud, the benefits of cloud. They need to understand how to organize teams and leaders around cloud, how to budget differently, how to plan programs differently, how to measure success. All of these take time, and as a result, capability academies tend to be relatively long engagements, weeks or months, occasionally years, for capability very technical and complex, like data engineering. But what's also important is to understand that time is associated with the social aspect of learning. It's not that anyone can go through these programs by themselves or in their own time. Because they are social, because they are designed to change the culture of the organization, these programs tend to be time-boxed, which means that we have cohorts of learners going through the program at the same time and achieving similar targets in their learning. If you're thinking that this sounds expensive, you're not wrong. Capability academies are very effective, but they are definitely more expensive than a typical training approach. Instead of just creating content and delivering it to an audience, academies are focused on tailored content for different audiences, on social learning, and a lot of expert interaction. These investments are essential to achieve the complex learning that your organization needs. But because of the time and the resources that are required, it will be more expensive. That said, the investment is absolutely worth it. Studies show that in the long run, capability academies are a much better investment because you are focused on growing your internal employees which creates a sense of engagement and purpose. And it's less expensive than hiring and onboarding and needing to realign new employees to your culture. So while it is a daunting prospect, it is important to understand that building capabilities isn't a business requirement, and this is a proven way to do it. So far, we've talked about capabilities in a pretty general sense, everything from data literacy to customer service. But let's talk now about what it takes to help leaders lead their organization into a digital future. There are capability academies that are designed specifically for this purpose, and they have some additional components that help them become successful. One factor that I think is actually very critical is mandatory participation. Because digital transformation is not a nice to have for an organization, it's not something that you can opt out of. Having mandatory participation in leadership capability academies sends a really strong message to your organization about the need for change and ensures that your leaders have what it takes to take your organization to the next level. In our academies, we also recommend individual assessment. What this means is that at the end of a program, leaders need to demonstrate what they have learned by producing authentic tasks that are aligned to their role and further the mission and strategy of the organization. While it's possible to have an academy that is focused on instructor-led training or fully live sessions, for leaders, we recommend an online content approach. Online content is scalable and it's accessible to busy leaders wherever they are in the world and at any time of day or night. Learning how to lead digital transformation is something that really requires outside-in perspective. Because it is a changing construct, the technologies are dynamic, the ways that data are used are very complex, it's very helpful to have an expert from the outside working with your leaders to provide insights on what's happening within the industry, to talk about the future of technologies, what's emerging on the market, and to share some best tips and practices for how to realign your organization and shape the culture to effectively adopt transformation principles. One thing that is particularly challenging for digital leaders is the fact that it's not really a standalone capability. Learning how to lead digital transformation actually requires mastery of a number of different capabilities. In the cloud example, cloud itself is a capability, but learning how to lead a transformation, what is required from an organizational perspective, a finance perspective, a culture perspective, that is an entirely separate capability. And as a result, effective leadership programs are really focused on not just how each capability functions on its own, but really how they're integrated together. What are the dependencies? How do you prioritize if you have multiple goals that need to function simultaneously? This kind of complexity around transformation is what is particularly valuable to leverage an outside support to help you navigate, understanding what are the trade-offs and helping you think through what implementation and integration really requires. Reflection is an important component of a leadership academy. Understanding where your organization needs to go requires leaders to think a lot about what is happening now. What are the triumphs? What are the challenges? What are the opportunities within your space? As a result, when we build capability academies here at EPAM, we embed lots of opportunities for leaders to think about what's happening within their space, within their company, within their industry, and how that needs to change or stay the same for transformation to succeed. When we build transformation academies for leaders, we often end those by having our leaders thinking about implementation plans, about strategic alignment and action plans, really tangible things that are deliverables coming out of the program that show what they know, but are also aligned to helping the organization progress. Last, but certainly not least, is a focus in academies on change management. Digital transformation or any really organizational change requires leaders to understand and have a plan for how to bring employees along. That's why another output of an effective academy is often an OCM plan, an approach for how you're going to communicate your strategy, get people on board, and help them see and believe in the vision and future that you're establishing. I wanted to talk a little bit about how this looks in practice and walk you through a case study of a digital leadership capability that we've recently completed with one of our clients. In this case, when looking at the automotive landscape, the executive team identified a number of strategic pillars that were required to help their organization transform. And the CIO reached out to EPAM to ask for our help in building their leaders' capabilities to understand and lead these technologies. In this case, there were 6 kind of fundamental transformation pillars that they needed to achieve, everything from open source to leading transformation. And the client wanted not just for their leaders to understand the technologies, but understand how to lead them and transform the organization through them. EPAM was selected as a partner for this effort because of our experience working with executives and our over 25 years of seeing clients succeed and fail in similar transformation initiatives. They reached out to us as an outside-in expert to partner with them to build the appropriate capability academy for their leaders. When discussing with the client what they hoped to achieve, it quickly became clear that it wasn't really just a focus on learning. It was really a change initiative that incorporated a variety of different objectives. The executive team wanted this program to create a sense of urgency within the organization, to motivate people for change, to help them drive a culture of learning and continuous improvement, and also to drive implementation and problem solving, particularly to identify barriers to implementation and facilitate conversation around how to overcome those. The program team included a variety of expertise areas from both the client and from EPAM. We leveraged senior technologists, learning experts, organizational change experts, CIO advisors, and industry experts. And together, a shared team created the parameters of the program and outlined what was the important content, the activities, and the mentorship models to make it work. Every aspect of this Capability Academy was tailored for the automotive industry, for the client, and for leaders. It included a number of things that I've mentioned previously. Mandatory participation was required from the executive team. Participants were assessed at the end of the program on their individual knowledge that they'd gained through the experience, but also on their action plans and strategic objectives and SMART goals coming out of the program. In the process of the engagement, the client refined their strategy, actually identified a number of gaps that they had that they didn't recognize. They had concrete action plans, and all of this was supported with online material, a lot of reflection activities, coaching from internal client experts as well as EPAM experts, and a real emphasis and conversation around change management and bringing the organization with them. One thing I loved about this program was that the executive team was the first to go through the 16-week engagement. They did everything from taking the individual assessments to the content to the activities to the deliverables. And they did it in a very public way. And because they took this approach, the organization realized that this was a special event. It wasn't a typical training exercise. It wasn't a nice to have. It was strategically critical for the organization, so much so that the busy executive team led that charge. That activity, that message was resonant throughout the organization and was one of the key pillars of success that we identified in our conversations with them at the end. So what were the outcomes? In any Capability Academy, you're going to need to measure both short-term, medium-term, and long-term outcomes. It's not possible for any learning program, no matter how fantastic, to immediately result in increased profits or decreased costs. Instead, the learning programs and Capability Academies in general are directional. They allow you to know what your people understand, to have action plans and new resources coming out of it, but those still need to be implemented. So, what did we measure? We measured a couple of things that were both in the short term and immediate and in the longer term. The first thing we focused on was just what did people learn from beginning to end on quantitative assessment. In this case, a lot. The executives in this program had a 30% growth on their final assessment, which was a complex scenario-based task. And this was a tremendous win for the organization. They were thrilled with the quantitative outcomes, like the clear indications that the investment had resulted in some truly meaningful delta in knowledge and skills. They were also focused on confidence to implement. Did our executives coming out of this program believe that they could implement? Did they see themselves having the efficacy to drive this new strategy forward? And the answer was a resounding yes. More than 95% of the participants in this program said that they felt confident, they had a new energy, and they had new ideas for how to drive this transformation forward. About a year afterward, we worked with the company to identify other things that they had been seeing at the conclusion of the program. And what we found was that the coordinated action plans that came out of those final workshop sessions were implemented. And this resulted in kind of an increased velocity for activities in the organization and a lot of cross-organization collaboration, people working together to achieve these action plans. They identified gaps in their strategy, things that they thought that they were successfully achieving that they weren't, and they couldn't because they had some blind spots in their planning. So in the year following this program, they filled those gaps. They dug deeper, in this case into APIs, to understand what was required for the organization and put plans and resources in place to achieve a more complex and robust strategy. Collaboration across the organization was also deepened as a result of this engagement. Teams that had never worked before began to find common connections and economies of scale, which allowed the organization to save money and increase the speed to change. And lastly, there was a tremendous impact and acceleration of similar, related initiatives within the IT organization. They saw a faster turnaround, new approaches to vendors, and more autonomous teams and agility within the organization. The client was thrilled with the quality and the impact of this learning experience. In fact, out of the thousands of suppliers that this client works with every year, EPAM was awarded the Supplier of the Year designation because the program was so impactful and helped them move the needle toward real change and transformation within the organization. Shifting from a traditional training approach to a Capability Academy is not simple, and I want to share with you some implementation tips that we have seen work effectively with our clients and in our own Capability Academies here at EPAM. The first, and I think I mentioned this previously, is the importance of working in partnership with your business. Capability Academies should be identified, developed, and derived from your business strategy, your technology vision, so that you are confident that you will have the internal capabilities to achieve your objectives by growing those skills in-house. Another tip is to really manage expectations around cost and be prepared to justify why this investment is worthwhile. You also need to identify the immediate, short-term, and directional criteria and impact metrics to show that this program is achieving the objectives set out for it. Thinking about what you can measure immediately within 1 year and within 2 years is going to help you design an effective program and justify investment for leaders to show growth in your strategy. With any learning program, it's important to create your assessments first. Understand what you want people to be able to do differently as a result of this experience. What are the deliverables that will help drive the organization forward and show what individuals have learned? By designing assessments first, you will then backward engineer a capability academy that helps to achieve them. But when you're designing these assessments, do it carefully. Assessments can be very powerful, and anytime you're measuring something, it really changes how people behave. So ensure that your assessments are aligned to your goals, that they are valid, that they are reliable, and that they're achievable with your program. If necessary, reach out to a psychometrician or an assessment expert to help you devise these criteria for success for individuals so that they are going to benefit, not harm your efforts. I think it's really very important for your senior leaders to demonstrably show their support for any capability academy. Have them messaging the importance of developing these within your organization, how they align to your business strategy, and how they're going to help your customers engage better and more proactively with your organization. Because academies are reliant on experts, you need to be thinking about the fact that they are not trainers. They've probably never been asked to engage in this sort of activity before. Don't forget to coach your experts, to partner them with trainers and help them learn the best practices in working with others and sharing their expertise. You're probably not going to get an academy right the first time around. As a result, plan in time to pilot your approach, get feedback, and refine the model. And finally, especially for areas where, like transformation, where these are new capabilities that your company does not yet have, or new areas in which you need to become much more expert, think about bringing in outside support. Don't go that road alone. Because capabilities are so dependent on expertise, because they're not able to be easily practiced, look for a partner who has experienced those and can give you tips on what works in practice, not just in theory, to give you some examples of success stories and help you avoid common pitfalls. Thank you for joining this conversation on building capabilities. I hope it's been helpful for you.